Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, or I'm saying good evening from Groton, good whatever time of day it is, wherever you are around the world. Thanks for coming to join us tonight. I've got a crew of luminaries from our performing arts department here, handpicked by the director of their theater program and director of our music program, some current students and some alums. And so let's go around the horn and have them introduce themselves to you. I'm going to go in the order on my screen here, so I'm going to start with Ben.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Ben. I'm in fifth form, which is an equivalent of junior year of high school. And I play the saxophone in jazz band. I play bassoon and oboe in orchestra, and I also play
piano. And hometown?
Oh, Avon, Connecticut.
Julian.
Hi, my name is Julian. I am an alum, as you can see, class of form of 2019. So a couple years out. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, not that far. And I was involved mainly in the theater program, also did a little bit of dance every once in a while. Yeah.
Wally.
Hi, I'm Wally. I'm currently a sixth former or senior at Groton. I've been doing a lot of theater at my time here. I also play the guitar. Yeah. Oh, and I'm from Groton, Massachusetts.
And Caroline.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caroline. I am from Concord, Massachusetts, although I am currently in Chicago, Illinois. I am the form of 2021. I just graduated last year. And I was mainly involved in the theater program at Groton, though I also did quite a bit of dance. And I was involved some in the music program as well. So that's about me.
And Allison?
Hi, I'm Allison. I'm from Chicago, Illinois in Shanghai, China. And I'm currently a sixth former or senior at Groton. I came to Groton as a violinist, and then I was able to kind of explore vocal music and also theater a little bit more when I came here.
And Anna.
Hi, my name is Anna. I'm from Curitiba, Brazil. And at Groton, I was the guitarist for the jazz ensemble and the jazz combo. I was also part of the guitar project, and I was involved just a tiny bit with theater.
One of the great joys of working in admission office is honestly looking over a big stack of applications and deciding who gets to come here. And another joy is looking back at the end of kids' careers here, and we've got 3 who have concluded and 3 who are getting close to it. And we always say, if we see them walk across the stage at graduation and say, boy, that girl benefited a great deal from coming to Groton, and at the same time, Groton benefited hugely from them having chosen us, we view that as an absolute home run for the admission department. So I remember looking over applications for each of the kids who are with us tonight. So many talents that were there, and then so many talents that grew here while on the circle, and some maybe undiscovered talents that blossomed here as well. It's so much fun to see those things come to light. Both student generated, some initiatives that come up from the students' own initiative, and then directed by faculty as well, whether it's one of the school's main ensembles. And so again, it's fun to vicariously participate in the arts by just seeing the remarkable progress made and the remarkable performances demonstrated by these kids. So what I'd like to do now is again go around the horn and maybe have each of these kids talk a little bit about sort of signature moments for them related to performing arts, things that they remember about times where they really enjoyed a moment or an experience, something like that. And so if it's okay with you, I'll stick to that same rotational order. And Ben, do you feel ready to lead off with some a moment or moments that encapsulate your Groton music experience?
Well, yes, I suppose. So I think for me, one of my favorite moments at the school was my freshman year of third form in the winter. This is the jazz band every year goes to play at the Hard Rock Cafe in Boston. And this isn't our first performance in the year, right? jazz band and orchestra always play like a Christmas concert called Groton Pops, and there's always the Parents Weekend concert. But the Hard Rock Cafe concert for me was just something else, because not only did we play like a full 12, 14 songs, but you get this experience of, going on the bus, like you almost feel like you're on tour or something, and going over to Boston, setting up on the actual Hard Rock stage, and it's just so words can hardly describe the feeling of being on that stage, and you're all like smushed together, trying to make some music. And it was also the first time I got to do an improv solo in my high school career, and I came to Groton knowing next to nothing about how one makes a solo, but we played this song called Chicken, and basically we went around the band and everyone took a solo, and so it was nice knowing that there was someone for you, someone after you. You had something to follow, someone to look up to. I was playing baritone saxophone at the time, and I remember the alto one that year was absolutely amazing, and just being able to play with him was a great experience. But yeah, I've been doing solos ever since in the jazz band, but that first time was just something else.
Thanks, Ben. Julian, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I mean, my story is definitely one that I look back on as a defining moment in my theater career at Groton. It came very early on, actually. I had just done up until, because I started in second form, which is the 8th grade at Groton, and that year I did the one acts, which are these like short student written and directed plays that you can perform in addition to your other afternoon activities. So I did that as like my trial period, I guess, in the theater world at Groton. And I really loved it. And it's how I got to know Lori, the director of the theater program at Groton. And so I did my first main stage show my third form winter, so 9th grade, which was The Wiz, which was really fun. And I guess kind of similarly to Ben, I was really astounded by like the professionalism of it all. I had never performed, I had done a lot of theater before that, but had never worked for so long in such a big theater and like with such elaborate sets. I remember the set and the costumes for some reason really blew my mind at Groton, just because they really do look amazing for a high school. Like they turn it out really impressively. But I was having a great time. I was in the ensemble, learning my dances, had a great time. And then 2 weeks before our performance date, the junior who was playing the Scarecrow unfortunately could not do the show. So they asked me, like very much out of the blue, if I would play the Scarecrow with just 2 weeks notice. And I was already kind of terrified to be in the show at all, like I said, because it felt like the most professional thing I'd ever done. And then to be asked to do a lead role in 2 weeks seemed completely impossible. But I think that's the moment where I really learned the way that the theater community, especially for me and my experience at Groton, comes together to like bolster each other. Because from Lori, our director, to Nicole, our choreographer, both of whom are incredible people, but also like all the other students, especially the seniors who I was terrified of, as it often happens when you're an 8th or 9th grader, they really reached out to me. I remember a bunch of them like just running lines with me, like during our lunch breaks, just taking their own time to really like support me in this moment, because they knew this was a crazy endeavor. And in the end, I actually had so much fun doing it. Like all things, it was terrifying, but ultimately the best experience ever, and kind of launched me into the rest of my theater career. It was very much a trial by fire, but it worked out well. And it meant that I got just so like deeply ingrained and addicted to then doing those shows that I continued literally from that semester onward, did not do anything else but theater in the afternoons until I graduated, which is crazy. But yeah, I do think that like very fast-paced environment that kind of started out my main stage career actually helped me a lot, because even today, college shows work much more quickly. Like Groton, you don't normally get 2 hours a day to work on a show ever again in your life. So that kind of like intense, just go for it and see what sticks kind of environment helped me in the long run a lot. So yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Wally.
Yeah, so similarly to Julian, I started theater at Groton really young. I started in 8th grade or 2nd form. And I remember auditioning for the winter musical, which was Cabaret at the time. And I was absolutely just terrified. I remember just stressing out in my dorm like the night before, rehearsing my song. And I went up for my audition, that went well. And then I got into the show, and then the first rehearsal, I was pretty petrified. I didn't really know anyone. I was one of 2 people in my form who was in the show. And I sort of walked in, sitting in kind of like the back of the theater. And then I just remember the senior girl, Josie Fulton. She had a huge smile on her face. And she sort of took a second look at me and recognized me, and came up and introduced herself. And she had been a really close friend of my sister's who had graduated the year before. And she was just super welcoming, introducing herself, and sort of spent that first day with me, introducing me to people, which I've loved. And Josie at the time was a theater prefect. And now I'm also a theater prefect in the 6th form. So it's really great. Right now I'm in the fall play, and it's awesome. We have a pretty young cast, actually. It's majority younger forms, which has been really fun. Just the theater program has been a great way for me, I feel like, to really get to know kids in different grades, and you really form a really close bond with them throughout rehearsals, and just to create this show with someone else is like a pretty powerful experience. And I've just loved that aspect of the theater department. Every year, every show, just forming really close relationships with people in different forms who I otherwise probably would never have talked to. So that's been something I've loved.
And Wally kind of hinted at this by giving you his hometown. His dad is a member of the faculty here. And Wally, what was your first show you were ever involved in here as a member of the chorus or whatever, as a faculty kid?
I think it was either Once on This Island or Pirates of Penzance. I don't even remember when those took place. It was a long time ago. But.
Yeah, Pirates of Penzance was, I think, my first or second year here. So that would be 10, 11 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, I was super young, but those were super fun to do. We had like other faculty kids also in the shows, it was really fun.
Caroline.
So my story in the performing arts at Groton begins not dissimilarly to Julian's or Wally's, in that I entered the Performing Arts Center, the CPAC, for my very first audition for the winter musical Cabaret, which was the winter of my freshman year. And I was lucky enough to be in that show with both Julian and Wally. But I was deeply, deeply intimidated by the talent and professionalism of everyone in the room, from all of the upperclassmen who were in the cast with me, to the adults and the people who would become my mentors. Julian mentioned Lori and Nicole, who have both become incredibly influential people in my life. But I was deeply, deeply intimidated to be working with such talented people. And like Julian, I had done a lot of theater before coming to Groton. I had done a lot of community theater, and that had really been one of my biggest passions. But I arrived at Groton, and I was unsure of my place in the theater program. I didn't know really where I would stand and what it would feel like to get to work on these shows. And I discovered really quickly that this is really representative of Groton as a whole, I feel, but particularly in the theater department, there was this incredible sense of community and support that I, as a freshman, felt immediately. And one of my favorite memories, really from my entire Groton career, but particularly from third form, was walking out into the lobby after one of the performances of Cabaret. And it was the night when a lot of the student body came to the performance. It was probably the Saturday night. And I walk out into the lobby with all of my castmates, probably right next to Julian or something. And we were all just greeted by this uproarious applause. And I had never really experienced anything like that before, just this feeling of overwhelming support from the school community. And then, fast forward a few years, exactly 2 years later, I was lucky enough to be in another one of the musicals, Legally Blonde, with Wally and Allison this time. There we go. There's Allison and I. And it was a fantastic show for so many reasons. It was so much fun to work on. The cast was really diverse in all sorts of ways, in identity, in theater experience. We had some cameo appearances from people who had never done any sort of theater before. We had cameo appearances from faculty members. So it was really just a special show to be a part of. And at that point, I was a theater prefect. I sort of thought I had it all figured out at that point. But I realized very quickly that I had to rely on the support that the rest of the cast and crew was offering me so generously, because really they were. I had never really experienced any support system quite like that. And I, again, had a really similar experience when I after the performances, and I was tired, and we all were. It's a killer of a show, and we walk out into the lobby to this wonderful sense of community and support of all of these people who had come out to watch us perform and demonstrate all of our hard work over the course of those few months. And so that was just this crazy full circle moment for me. Coming from being a freshman to being a theater prefect, and feeling that continuous sense of support from both my castmates and the crew of the shows, and from the school community at large. So that was just really special to me.
Allison.
Well, I've been playing classical music for as long as I know. And when I came to Groton, I was really looking forward to kind of take that in a different direction and just kind of try different things. And one of my favorite things about the Groton music program, it still is the chamber music, which essentially is just small ensembles of people. And in my first year, I actually was kind of found in the hallways by 3 seniors because they needed a violinist for their quartet. So I essentially joined the class out of the blue, and I started playing quartet music with 3 new seniors. As Julian was saying, it's kind of scary at first when you're a freshman, but they were so nice and it was so fun to play. And actually the summer of my freshman year, there was a GEO, which is a global education trip. And we went all the way to Spain with the whole orchestra, and we played in different cities, and it was so fun. But one of my favorite memories from that trip is kind of after a long day of performances, our quartet actually decided to go into the city and kind of sit in front of this really majestic church and just start busking on the street. And our sheet music was flying everywhere, but it was really fun and impromptu. And we actually got a decent amount of money from our performances. And yeah, it was just a really fun experience. And also, I actually ventured into theater a little bit in my time here. I actually played in the pit orchestra my first year, but my second year, I decided that I would audition for the musical. I've been watching Caroline, Julian, and Wally on stage, and it looked so fun. So I decided to kind of shoot my shot, and I auditioned. I was really panicking beforehand, and I was practicing my songs in my sleep, but it was amazing. I got to play such a fun part in Legally Blonde, and I was performing on stage, but in a different way that I was as a violinist. And it was just amazing. Obviously, all of the theater people here have mentioned the amazing support that you get from that community. And it was so fun to venture into a different side of the performing arts at Groton.
Awesome. Anna, how about you?
Well, most of my time at Groton as a guitarist was very focused on the jazz ensemble, which is our big band at Groton. And I remember the winter of my fourth form year, so that's my sophomore year of high school. That was my first year at Groton because I came in as a new 10th grader. And I had a basketball game right before our Groton Pops, which is our Christmas concert. And I ran from our athletic center to the forum, which is a very short distance, but I was still in my uniform and everything. I picked up my guitar and I came in just in time to play together with like the whole jazz ensemble as well as the orchestra. And it was just a lot of fun. And I think it was very representative of who I was at Groton, like this girl who did everything basically. And it was very fun. I remember one song that we play every Groton Pops is called Angels 13. And it's like a heavy metal rendition of a classic Christmas carol. So it's always a lot of fun, and jazz can seem very scary. I know it was for me at first because I hadn't played jazz at all before going to Groton. But Kenji, who is our director, always makes sure that everyone knows that they're being like heard and that they're being included in everything that we do. So it was just like a great experience to have as one of my first concerts at Groton.
That's fantastic. I didn't attend Groton, so I don't have no personal stories, but I've got one about my son having gone here that I'll share right now, take that liberty. But my son had never really done any acting before he got here. But you heard Lori Sales mention, who's the head of the theater program. She was his dorm parent, and one night she walked into check-in and caught him imitating his hockey coach. And the guys were in the common room were all laughing their heads off, one, because he'd been busted, and two, because he apparently was a pretty funny rendition. But afterwards, she said, you should try acting here. And I couldn't possibly, I don't know how to act. It said, you were just acting. So she coaxed/coerced him into trying theater the next year. And he adored it. I think his first show, he had like 3 different roles and a total of 5 lines. And then senior year, he was cast as a lead, and the woman he was starring with was born into the theater. She was started acting at 3 years old. Her dad was a Broadway producer. She now holds degrees in theater from Yale and Juilliard. But I love the fact that on the same stage was Mariana, who is her life was, is, and will be theater, and Nick, who just said, hey, that looks like fun. I want to try that. And you'll see that here in many aspects of the performing arts program and in other aspects, whether it's on the football team or whatever. But this is a place for people to hone skills, and it's a place for people to discover skills. And I love that about Groton. You heard a couple of mentions of some key people involved with music here. Lori Sales is truly incredible. And I know you guys are probably looking at a bunch of different schools, and all of them are going to have impressive programs. But I'd be hard pressed to imagine a theater director anywhere who has the experience and the expertise that she does. And as good as she is on the stage, she was able to coax her husband to leave the touring company of Cirque du Soleil to be the head of our tech here. And so he runs the set shop and is generally in charge of all of the lights and sound and everything like that, with a really strong staff to support him. So the theater department is really remarkable, both the kids who are on stage, but also the faculty support that is offered in all aspects of the theater. And similarly in music, Kenji was mentioned, who is the head of the jazz band, a remarkably talented multi-instrumentalist. Tim Taranella, also a remarkably talented multi-instrumentalist who heads the orchestra. And she's on sabbatical this year, but Marianne Lanier usually heads up the entire program. Dan Moriarty is the organist for the chapel and head of the choir program. And then one of the wonderful things about being as close to Boston as we are is there's a remarkable cast of sort of assistants in the music department. I think there's 23 different people who come in as adjunct faculty members to be able to provide instruction. on every instrument you can name. We've had kids take lessons in bagpipes, didgeridoo, as well as all of the sort of mainstream instruments. So it's lovely to have this artistic community around who can provide support for our kids when they take private lessons during the academic day and look to enhance their skills in that regard. I don't know if my mentioning any of those names triggers anything with you kids. If you have stories about the support you received from any of our instrumental teachers or any of the people associated with theater that you'd like to share.
Well, I mean, in response to your question, Mr. Fennell, I've only had excellent experiences with the music lesson teachers. Kenji teaches saxophone, and so he's really helped me become the saxophonist that I am now. I've moved up from baritone saxophone to alto one this year. And oboe lessons, I started oboe here because there was a bassoonist in the year above me, or 2 years above me, but there were no oboists in the orchestra, so I said, I can learn oboe, and I got set up with Mr. Price, who is actually the principal oboist of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and his lessons were absolutely amazing, and I learned so much about not just oboe but just musicianship in general from him.
Fantastic. Anyone else have something to share?
In my experience, the private lessons have been very student oriented. So your teacher will help guide you towards what the type of musician that you want to become. It's not necessarily a set structure that everyone follows. So personally, I had obviously like private guitar lessons, and I grew a lot as a guitarist, both for individual performances as well as playing in a big group. So it's a very detail oriented towards the person that is being taught rather than just like a general curriculum for an instrument.
Thanks.
Yeah, I know. I can talk about, I also played the guitar and was taking guitar lessons. And a lot of the stuff I found was actually from TikTok, just like little snippets of music that I really liked. And my teacher was really great in that he was able to sort of pick up the key parts of the song and work it out with me, even though we didn't have sheet music or anything like that. And I ended up making some pretty cool pieces out of just little things that we were able to create from TikTok. So
awesome.
I mean, Miss Lanier, who is the director of music here, has been so supportive of me and what I love doing with the violin. Even though she's primarily like a vocalist and an opera singer, she's been so invested in like what I do. I even had this like solo performing arts course that I took up in 4th form, and I've been doing ever since, where essentially I kind of like am walking through like the repertoire that I'm working on. Like, for example, even as the pandemic hit, our class block was still designated to like kind of mini Zoom meetings and me kind of talking about what specific pieces I was working on and specific sections that I was struggling with. And it's just been like so amazing to have that kind of support for what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
Cool. Did any of you take advantage of an opportunity to do FSA afternoon work in music or in any other area? Yeah, Allison?
Wait, then you can go. I just went.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've done music FSA for piano, and essentially a music FSA you can take off. So every student is required to do an afternoon activity every term, one per term. And so music FSA lets you use music as your afternoon activity in addition to anything you're doing during the school day. So I was able to practice piano all afternoon. And there's this big FSA recital at the end of the term, so you can perform at the end of that, and a lot of students also will wrap up their FSA with like a solo recital, and give one big recital where they play, 30 minutes to an hour worth of music. And it's just a great way to find time to practice in the hectic Groton schedule, but also to really improve on your craft.
Excellent. Well, at this point, I'd love to open it up to questions. I know we probably have some already in the chat and the Q&A, because ultimately we'd like to steer some of this discussion to what our guests would most like to hear about tonight. And so Ms. Chica will help us sort of process the chat. And what do we have in so far?
The first question is every student required to take one art class per term? So I think that's a good one to start with.
Anyone want to field that? Maybe somebody who's here currently, rather, since things have changed a little bit.
I can talk about that. So I'll just go sort of by form. In second form or eighth grade, you spend the year, each term, 3 terms, doing a different sort of art course. So there's a theater course, a visual arts course, and then a musicianship course where you also play the steel drums. And that's a really great opportunity in the 8th grade where you can try a bunch of different arts all in one year. And then in third form or freshman year, there's an art requirement, but that can take the form of visual arts. So like a drawing and painting course, also like wood shop, orchestra, our choir, or a theater course. So that's also, and those are year-long courses. So that's another great way for you to sort of choose a specific art path that you want to take. And then an upper school, which is sophomore through senior years, I believe it's one full year of art. So you can fulfill that by taking music lessons. Oh, I also forgot to mention music lessons are an option in the third form. Or there's options to take theater courses, continue with choir, orchestra, and of course like the visual arts. So things like that.
It seems like in the chat, people are just wondering if you could just speak more to the types of classes offered in visual arts and what your experiences have been in them. So I think anybody could really field that.
I wasn't deeply involved in visual arts, but I did take a ceramics class in 4th form or my sophomore year. And granted, I know nothing about visual arts, but it was a very fun class. And I actually learned a lot about how ceramics works and how like to mold things. So my experience from like the view of an outsider has been very positive. But I don't know if anyone else has more experience and can speak more to that.
I also haven't had as much experience in the visual arts, but one of my closest friends came into Groton. I don't think he really considered himself a super artistic person, but he took the drawing and painting course in third form. And from that formed a really great connection with his art teacher here and has continued doing those courses throughout Groton, just more drawing and painting courses, and then also a sculpting course, which he's really enjoyed. And I don't think he really expected that going in, but I think definitely having that art requirement in third form, although it's a requirement, it has to be done. I think it really helped him find like one of his new passions here.
The art program really, there is going to be a modest requirement associated with it, but you can really take it as far as you want to go. And so there is a specialist in the sort of photography, film and digital. There's and people with a specialization in ceramics, but generalists in everything. And so really whatever you want to do, there's going to be expert guidance there. A lot of kids will take art just kind of as a kind of nice oasis in the middle of their schedule, a kind of chill period where they can listen to a little music and talk with their friends while they're working. It's obviously a lighter, no homework kind of class. So a lot of kids enjoy that experience, but you can take it all the way up through portfolio construction. If you're going to focus on arts and want to look at assembling a portfolio for college, you can certainly do that. There's lots of opportunities and support for as far as you want to push the arts here.
And Ms. Chica actually brought up an excellent point, and to your point, Mr. Fennell, about really sort of pushing the limits of visual arts. I had the chance to participate in a fashion show the spring of sixth form, for which two of my closest friends designed and crafted their own clothing, and they asked some of their friends to model that clothing for them in what was really the sort of outdoor demonstration of the final projects of several people involved in the visual arts. So not only was it a fashion show, and there was this sort of makeshift runway outside of the schoolhouse, but there was also a lot of really amazing photography on display, and some drawings and paintings. And it was just this really special sort of multifaceted artistic experience. I mean, that's really the best way I can describe it. It was so much fun, and there was a really fantastic turnout. A lot of people came to see this sort of I wouldn't really call it a show, but this demonstration of these final projects, which was really cool to see. So much support for so many of the really talented visual artists at Groton.
And there's a gallery on campus that typically hosts a professional outside show that's up pretty much all the time. And then there's sort of less formal galleries that, again, might have an outside presenter or might have a student show. And then there's all kind of, like last spring, there was an underclass student who kind of commandeered a wall in one of the lower hallways and hung a one-man show down there. And obviously publication in things like the Grotonian, which is a literary magazine, but also features photography and art. Lots of opportunities to have your art in front of lots of people. What else do we have for questions?
One question is, how many chances do you get to perform?
So that really depends on what group, what instrument, stuff like that. So but there are many, many opportunities throughout the year. Parents' Weekend is the first really big opportunity for the main groups. So that's actually happening in, I believe, a week or two. And so, the jazz band, the orchestra, the choir, dance and theater, sometimes tag along also. It's a very big, every group gets 10 or so minutes to just show something they've been doing. There's also Groton Pops, which is a Christmas concert in the winter. There are also recitals in the winter and spring for just people taking music lessons. So you can just sign up for those and perform. Some people only will play one short little piece. Some people will play in 5 different recitals. And there's really no limit to you can have beginner pianists to piano prodigies playing. It's really just open to anyone. And there's also jazz band gets to go to the Hard Rock Cafe in the winter, and you'll have the GEOs, which in the time before COVID, every group would get every year would have one group go. I expect it'll start up again soon. And there's also a spring concert where everyone plays. There's also lesson and carols in the winter. And there's also open mics throughout the year where anyone can sign up for. Those are a lot of fun, low commitment. And so there are many, many opportunities.
I may have missed it, but another opportunity that Ben may or may not have mentioned is that we have a chapel service to kick off the day 4 times a week. And students are invited to provide postlude music for that. And it might be somebody performing instrumentally, it might be somebody singing, or a small group, like a combo or something like that. And also the major ensembles that the choir performs in chapel routinely, but we have special chapel services once a term dedicated to the jazz band and orchestra performing. So there really are quite a few opportunities to display talents in front of your friends.
There are a few questions about managing your schedule. Like, when do you find time to practice? Are the practice rooms accessible? And how do you balance it all? Like, how do you balance playing in the orchestra, being in theater, pursuing sports? So general question around practice and where you fit it in.
I mean, that's a great question. Also, one that, oh, sorry, Allison, actually. Okay. It's one that like you'll have to deal with no matter what at Groton in many ways. Like, there's going to be so many things you want to do that like you have to find ways to balance your schedule. But a few of the ways that kind of people have already mentioned that you can build the arts kind of into your academics or into your requirements is a way that you can make sure that you're able to do it. So we talked a bit about FSAs. There's also something called tutorials, which are kind of classes that you design yourself your senior year, that you, if you have like a specific interest in the arts, or it can be anything. And in our case, it was the arts. I did 2 of them, and that was a great way to like keep up my acting, or I did an acting one and a dance one, both of which were really helpful in like building that time into my life so that I didn't have to carve it out for myself. But also Groton is such a structured place in terms of time that like you actually have like study hall your first 2 years that's very like, this is your time to do your homework. And so you never have to worry about finding that time, because in your first few years it's really built in for you, which is really helpful. Of course, it's gonna get overwhelming at times, but it is helpful to have this kind of like map of like, okay, here's my classes, then afternoon, you have your afternoon activities, and then you have time before study hall where you can be practicing, you can go to the practice rooms then, or you can go to the theater and practice whatever you need to do, and then you can get to your homework. So there is always time. It's hard. Other advice? Or anyone else?
I don't know if this was explicitly stated, but practice rooms are open basically whenever the main school building is open, and you can go in during free time at any time. You can spend chunks of time there after sports or whatever. The only sort of rules and restrictions, Ms. Lanier, when she's here, gets a little short with kids if they leave it a mess, which is obviously reasonable. So as long as you maintain them, you're going to have no problem whatsoever.
And I will add to that that the accessibility of practice rooms was not something that I used often enough while I was at Groton. In college, at least in my experience, finding practice rooms to do anything. In my case, to rehearse some songs that I'm working on, or to practice some monologues. It is incredibly challenging to find rooms to practice in. It is incredibly challenging to reserve practice rooms. So at Groton, it is incredibly easy. They are accessible to everyone pretty much all the time. And so if you have the urge to rehearse or practice your instrument, whatever that may be, there is always space. There's always space to do that. And often, if you have a free period or any sort of chunk of free time throughout the day, that's the perfect time to go utilize some of those spaces.
Just to add on to that, I don't think I've ever walked into the music wing and seen every room taken. There was always a place to go. Sometimes I would like sneak into like the music classroom or something like that, but there was always a place to practice, I find. Yeah.
All right, next question is, what are the acapella groups like?
I mean, a few of us. Go, Caroline, go.
No, I mean, there are several of us here who can talk a little, actually several of us who have served as heads of Groton's acapella group, the Macapellas. And so the Macapellas is an all-gender acapella group, Groton's all-gender acapella group. It was a really wonderful experience for me, actually. It is largely student-led. We you know, in my time, we rehearsed once a week and we performed at special occasions, you know, family weekend, sort of, you know, weekends like that when we would have a sort of large audience. Often we would go to the headmaster's house for some functions, and, you know, perform at some concerts throughout the year. And it was really a fantastic experience to get to sing in a less structured way. I was in choir my freshman year, and I really loved that experience. But it is certainly a time commitment. It's a class that you take for credit, or, you know, it was when I took it. And so Macapellas was a great way for me to sing, you know, for an hour or so a week, with friends that I really enjoyed spending time with. And it also, I'm actually in an acapella group in college now, so it really prepared me for that experience here. I had the experience needed to join an acapella group at the collegiate level. So really, the acapella scene while I was there, while it was just this one group, Macapellas, was a really fun experience for me.
Yeah, this year actually Allison and I are the heads of Macapellas. And although like we can't sing unless we're outside just based on like the current COVID restrictions, we found that we actually had a lot of people audition this year, which was really great, and people were really enthusiastic about joining. And even though we do currently have to rehearse outside, it's a really great group, and people are really gung-ho to sing. And yeah, it's just like a really enjoyable, like just fun, relaxed time. We can sing music together, and get that worked up for Parents Weekend soon.
Nice. Can anybody speak to the dance program at Groton?
Yeah, I mean, Caroline and I both did a bit of dance. One of the questions was actually like about the different styles of dance, and I think Ms. Chika answered it well. But mainly what I would say is that it's very student driven. It's a pretty small program in the sense that like there are like, actually I don't know who's there anymore, but in my time there were two main dance teachers who were there, and like generally you can do it both as a like your afternoon activity, so just like theater or your sport, that can be like what you do in your afternoons, which is really fun. And they have a culminating show that's really fun to go to and like is always super impressive. But the way I was involved with the dance program was mainly theater adjacent, of course, but also I did like one-off numbers for those final dance shows. So if you're interested in joining, you can. And I never really danced before. Caroline can tell you I was not like a trained dancer in the way she was, but I loved doing it at Groton, and it was like very fun to be able to kind of dip my toe in like that. So if you're interested, there's always a way to like just approach the dance people and be like, hey, I'd love to do a show, and they'll take time. Like truly, Nicole took so much time out of her schedule to incorporate me and some other people into certain shows. Caroline and I actually did our own little 2-person number during my senior year, which was really lovely. So it's a really another amazing arts community on campus that is not high pressure at all. Is like welcoming of all levels. There are like trained ballerinas to like me, who's never really done a lot, like performed dance exclusively for people. So it's a really a fun group. But Caroline, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, Julian really covered so much of it. But speaking from the perspective of someone who danced quite a bit before coming to Groton, of course there is the dance program that you can participate in as an afternoon activity, which I did the fall of my freshman year. And that is certainly an option for people who want to incorporate that amount of dance into their lives. What I ended up doing for most of my Groton career was, as Julian was saying, was doing a lot of student-driven work. So I ended up performing quite frequently with 2 good friends of mine who are also trained dancers before Groton. And we got together freshman year, the fall of freshman year, and decided that we wanted to perform these little trio numbers together that we would choreograph on our own. And so we reached out to the powers that be, and they let us perform at, oh, there is me and Julian in the aforementioned dance duet. So that, yeah, and that was another sort of spontaneous thing. You know, our choreographer for the theater program, Nicole, asked us if we wanted to work on a number, and we did on our own time. But a lot of the work that I ended up doing was entirely student driven, with people who really wanted to be dancing, to be performing in front of audiences. And so there is absolutely a way that you can be involved in a more structured way as an afternoon activity. But also, if you love to dance, and you just want to get together with a group of students and perform for, you know, family weekend or at other functions, you can absolutely do that. Also, of course, the step team, which, you know, I so enjoyed watching perform. And so there are lots of really exciting ways that you can be a part of the dance program.
This may provoke modest jealousy amongst the graduates, but we hired a new dance instructor this year, a retired ballet performer and instructor in the area. And so she has joined. There's 3 women working in dance now, 2 young faculty members and 1 outsider who's coming in to lead the program. So taking a little bit of a step forward in that regard in terms of afternoon dance.
All right, the next question is about costume design. Do you design the costume yourself, or?
So I suppose I can talk a little bit about that. So generally speaking, for theater performances, we have a professional costume designer come to design for our main stage shows. And you know, I've seen some really fantastic work come from these professional designers who've, you know, in some cases even collaborated with students. I know for Legally Blonde, our costume designer took a friend of mine under her wing as a sort of apprentice, if you will. And so my friend got to work on the costume design for the show, pulling some items and even doing some shopping. And so in that respect, students can sort of become involved in the costume design process. And then also, as I was mentioning before, I had some friends who at Groton and beyond have become really interested in fashion design, who worked on that while they were at Groton, who sewed and crafted pieces that were worn, you know, in the fashion show that I participated in, that they took photographs of and showed as a final project in one of their classes. So you know, as in most areas, there are lots of ways for students to be involved in costume design and fashion design if that's something that they're interested in.
Right, I'm jumping around a little bit, but are there any instrument ensembles at Groton?
Well, I mean, so for, oh.
Go ahead, Allison.
I'll take like the classical side of it and you can go into jazz and stuff. So we have the chamber orchestra, which is essentially like the largest classical group we have on campus. So that's like woodwinds, brass, and strings, and percussion as well. And I've gotten a lot of great friendships from that group. It's great bonding experience between forms and everything. We also have select chamber music, as I mentioned before. It's a separate class for like people who really want to do it and are also in the orchestra. So it's essentially like student-led, smaller classical groups. Like I mentioned, I was in a string quartet. In past years, I've also done like cello duets or piano trio, which is with a piano and cello. I've also done a violin trio. There's a bunch of stuff, and we kind of like just have fun with the pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, so for jazz, there's we have a big band, which is the jazz ensemble that you can incorporate into your schedule as a class. And then branching off of that, we have the jazz combo, which is a select group of musicians that Kenji chooses to be in the combo. But if for some reason you don't make it into the combo and you really want to play like in a small jazz setting, Kenji also encourages people to create their own little combos. So at some point I was playing 3 different combos, like the official one and like 2 others that were student led. Aside from that, we also have Guitar Project, which is a group of guitarists that always plays together in several different settings, ranging from guitar recitals to end of year performances and other things like that. And then there are also people who get together to play postludes, as Mr. Fennell mentioned, play in chapel in the morning. Sometimes people get together for that or for open mics. So there are both formal and informal ensembles that you can be a part of. And they're all really gratifying because people at Groton love watching their peers play music.
One of the things that seems to dictate the combos here, rather than musical partnerships or like instrument combos, it's just friendships. So one of my advisees a few years ago during her senior year was in a quintet that was 2 violins, a viola, a cello, and a clarinet or something like that. And it wasn't so much that there's a lot of music scored for that assemblage of instruments. It's just they were great buddies and wanted to play together.
All right, and our last question is, has anyone any experience with improv? It seems there's a 1-term class. Is there also an improv club or anything?
I do not know about the class. Maybe someone can talk about that. But I remember my freshman year, there was, instead of like a spring show, they actually had an improv afternoon activity. And then they had an improv show at the end of the semester. So they learned, or the term. So they learned all about improv and kind of the techniques of improv, and then were able to perform that. So maybe, I don't know if we'll ever do that again, but also more generally, Lori, our theater director, definitely uses improv in our like day-to-day rehearsal, because as always, it's kind of a useful technique to like learn more about your character, and also like a really fun way to like get the cast together. So improv is definitely a part of the like typical rehearsal process. There's not always that improv afternoon activity. But also if you're interested in starting an improv club, people are always starting clubs. And like my friend and I started a film club that was really fun for us, and we just like got to produce our own stuff. So if you wanted to start an improv club, I guarantee people would want to join because it's just so much fun. And yeah, I think the community would love that.
Awesome. I want to share one more picture that may ensure that Caroline never wants to do this again.
Yeah, cabaret, right?
Yeah, that's cabaret. Thanks so much to all of you who took time out of your schedules to join us this evening. Really enjoyed having you here on campus virtually with our panel of artists. And thanks so much to the home team, the hosts, who gave up some time tonight to join us. It's been a pleasure reuniting with our alums tonight. And thanks so much to Ben and Allison and Wally, who are so involved in everything here and taking a little time out from their busy schedules. But really enjoyed sharing this kind of view on the arts program at Groton with you tonight. If you have more questions, and I'm sure you will, feel free to be in touch with any of us in the admission office. If we don't know the answer to your question, we'll track it down. And we hope to see you on campus and hope to see applications coming in this winter. But thanks so much again for sparing some of your time to join us. And we'll see you in the future. Bye-bye.